Hello and welcome everyone. So let us start with construction safety. So we the last time I posted on construction safety, that was on the introduction to construction safety, and today we are going to take element 2, and that is that we divided this into 9 different elements, and these elements were basically very simple: basics of accident prevention, common hazards and control measures. This is the element 2. Now today, because this element is very big, so we'll be only discussing on the basics of accident prevention. Last time we did introduction to construction safety, and because these 9 elements are very unique and very firm and very nicely divided, each individual element itself is a big discussion. So you have to understand that because the time is limited, so I'll be covering it in a very crisp way, but I'll try and accommodate as many concepts, as many things that are part and parcel of this particular element, and cover it to the fullest. So let us see what is there in basic accident prevention. We progress, how we understand that how accident prevention happens, what is going to happen, and how it is going to affect us. So, how do we progress? So, why this the need is there? Because there is an increase in industrialization, and which is in a planned manner. So there is always a possibility the society is progressive, but along with that, some degree of hazard always exists and involves that. What can happen? Exposure to an uncontrolled hazard can happen over a significant long period of time, can even give rise to adverse conditions such as ill health and industrial accidents. Now, what shall we do then? So, in order to ensure the total protection of worker, prevention adopted in controlling the hazard and prevent accidents. Now, industrial accident prevention works in India and did not begin in the very early stage of industrialization. So it came in the very lateral stage, because slowly and gradually from our mistakes we started learning, and then we started, actually working on the core concepts. So what was done to reduce the hazards? So there was formation of labor laws. So labor laws were enacted from time to time to remedy certain ill notice. The common, you know, social legislations are there. From time, the time lag is big, because when the accident happened, after that we took some remedial actions, and then the laws were enacted. So enforcement of the provisions of labor law legislations was brought about by for reducing the hazards in the industry, but slowly and gradually as in of accidents. So such event usually arise from organizational failing, which have, the responsibility of management, which is successful safety policy implementation is not seen. So what is the main emphasis? The emphasis is on achieving the effective control over both people and technology. So the aim is to strengthen the employee while minimizing the influence of human limitations. So let us start with some of the techniques. So accident prevention is relatively simple because accidents are caused by the presence of hazards. Now accidents are preventable. Simple techniques have been evolved for accident prevention through experiences. Now an effective safety program requires removal of hazard. To remove the hazard, first step is to identify it. So the first step for any control or anything that you want to achieve, the first step is to identify the hazard. Further, the steps that are formed are E's, all E's. Then you first, the ones you I and then all E's. So it is identifying the hazard, and then comes all E's. That is, first is estimate the hazard. So estimate the hazard is a term of its probability and severity. Now estimate the hazard completely means removal of hazard. If it is possible to eliminate the hazard completely, example is company, if you're doing if you have to do painting work. Now the painting work is required to be done up to say 20 feet of height. So what you do, you simply take a long pipe and put a roller brush over it. So you have completely eliminated work at height. Why? By using the pipe and extension of the brush. So that is called completely eliminating the hazard. Now the second part is estimate the hazard to replace it with less hazardous activity. So it is not necessary that we can, it is always possible to eliminate the hazard. So sometimes we have to eliminate or eliminate it with or replace it with a lesser hazardous alternative. Correct. Now coming to other part, that is engineering control. The another E is engineering control. So installing guards, guarding of machine, engineering controls all over the world have been very profound and very useful one also. So here it is not only the guarding of moving parts of machinery, but also for a particular machinery in eliminating the noise and other factors as well. So controlling the dust, noise. So if all the provisions, either you keep men inside that enclosure or you keep the equipment inside that enclosure, or only the dusting part is covered, so all that comes under engineering control. Now enclosing men. So by using personal protective equipment, when you are not able to take the above measure, surrender to the hazard, then you have to go for personal protective equipment. So enclosing the men. And finally comes the administrative part, that is the education. So education is required at every stage of implementation of these E's. Then comes the enforcement. So 75% of work force challenges from training, but the remaining workforce need enforcement for every safety arrangements made. And last but not the least is the enthusiasm. So enthusiasm is required at every stage of E. So you have to understand, we earlier we talked about all E's, but after in the last we talked about three E's that are very important. That is, the enthusiasm should be there, enforcement should be there, and education should be there. If education is not, only sufficient, then you need to put enforcement. Enforcement is not there, then enforcement and education is not able to do something, then you have to, and you have to actually act on the enthusiasm of the people. So this is how we uh, basically control the hazards. So this is about all E's. Now let us see another very interesting part of this element, and that is some terms and definitions that define certain things. So at the beginning itself, the plant or the work must be engineered for safety. This implies that new plant and processes should be provided with the engineering and proper safeguarding. During the operation, the plant, specific attention should be given for proper upkeep. Now, when we are moving forward, so some of the terms that we are going to talk of are very simple. First, accident. So what is accident? Any unplanned event that interrupts and interferes with the orderly progress of activity. Any unplanned event that interrupts or interferes with the orderly progress of activity. All accidents do not necessarily cause personal injuries. So this is what is the simple definition. Definition of accident is very simple. What is an accident? Any unplanned event that interrupts or interferes with the orderly progress of activity. So whatever the activity was going on, if the order is disrupted, so that is also an accident in the progress. So do we plan any accident? Like we can say that, okay, this year 10 accidents, next year 7 accidents, likewise, right? No, we don't do that. So hence it is unplanned event. When any accident takes place, employee stops their work, so everyone rushes at the scene of accident and production activity stops, so the progress stops. Hence the event is interrupts or or interferes with the orderly progress of activities. So the event, what does the event does? The event interrupts and interferes the orderly progress of activities. Now suppose something falls from the top. If someone is below the falling body, he gets injured. But if he is not below the falling body, he will not get injured. However, the event has potential to cause personal injury, hence accident. So accident can also be explained as any unplanned event that interrupts or interferes with the orderly progress of activity. All accidents do not necessarily cause personal injury. So this defines accident. Now let us define hazard. So any condition that may result in the occurrence or contribute to the severity of the accident is an hazard. Suppose a belt and pulley drive is not guarded and it is running. So if someone finger is caught in that belt, then his fingers may not only get injured, but it may be amputated, thereby increase the severity of the accident. This is hazard. Hence, hazard is said to be any condition that may result in the occurrence of or contribute to the severity of the accident is called hazard. So ultimately what you need to understand, what is causing it. Anything that has a potential to cause harm, that is what we say, that is hazard, right? So anything that has a potential to cause harm. So what can contribute? Accidents can happen, but what can contribute? Who is the, the contributing factor? Machine, guard, belt. So everything is hazard. So now comes the third element, the third definition, and that is accident prevention program. A formal organized effort to prevent accident from occurring or reoccurring is accident prevention program. Now accident prevention program changes from company to company, one process to another process, depending upon the hazards associated with it. The fourth part is injury on duty. Any injury that arises out of or in the course of a person's employment is injury on duty. Now, arises out of person's employment means injury due to hazard faced because of his occupation. Now, arising in the course of person's employment means while he was doing his work during his employment. Now, first aid injury. So, any injury on duty that needs not only first aid as treatment. So, any injury on duty that needs only aid as a treatment. So, only then it is called first aid injury. If the person meets an injury during his work, say an abrasion of his finger, he will go to the first aider, then the first aid and starts work again. Such injury is called first aid injury. So, only a first aider will do it and he'll come back. Now, disabling injury. Any injury that causes disablement beyond the day or shift, it is called lost time injury. So what is disabling injury? So this is the very big question. So people ask, "Hey, what is LTI?" So what is LTI? Disabling injury. Any injury that causes disablement beyond the day of shift. That means one shift, not 48 hours or 24 hours. No, one shift. If he is not able to resume the work in the same shift, that is disablement injury, that is lost time injury. Type of disability injury are: first, permanent or total disability; second, permanent or partial disablement; third, temporary or total disability; or fourth, temporary or partial disability. So if a worker is injured during the working hours and he is made unfit to work by the director or first aider, and he is not able to attend his duty till the end of his shift, such injury is disabling injury. Correct. So what is the if you take simple example, permanent total disability. So what is the example? Death. If a person dies. Now PPTD, that is permanent partial disability, means loss of body part, say a finger. Correct. So that is permanent but partial disability. If somebody's finger is cut, so loss of a body part or any part, right? So that is he can resume the job, but with partial disability. Then third is TTD, that is temporary total disability. That is, a person is injured during his work hour and is unfit to work for certain days, correct? For certain amount of days, like he has stitches or anything. So he resumes his duty after certain days. Those days are TTD, that is temporary total disability. Correct. Then comes examples of TPD, that is temporary partial disability. That is, suppose a worker resumes his duty after certain days. Suppose he has a fracture and he is okay now. So initially for 1 or 2 days, he is requested by his supervisor to give him a light work. Those 2 days after TPD for him. Correct. So this is what is. There are different words, that is partial total disability, that is PTD, permanent partial disability, that is PPD, temporary total disability, that is TTD, and temporary partial disability, that is TPD. So this is how disabling injuries are defined. Now comes the frequency rate. So the number of disabling injuries per million man hours of employee exposure is what gives you frequency rate. Now, frequency rate, usually, people are very much confused in this. So it is like, how we calculate frequency rate: number of disabling injuries multiplied by 10 to the power 6. That is per million man hours divided by total number of man hours work in that period. Now this can be calculated by individuals also. It is very easy. How we can calculate it? Like, if you are, how many people are there? Suppose you have, say, 1,000 working hours, correct? So you can calculate it that we have total 1,000 working hours. Now how many injuries happen? Suppose two injuries happen, and for 1,000, this is my total working hours. And how many people were working? So there were 12 people or 10 people were working. So 10 people were working for, multiply by my 1,000 working hours. So 1,000 working hours, 10 people have worked. So 10 into 1,000 is the value, and henceforth you just divide it by the total working. So that this gives you 10 into 1,000 gives you the total working hours. So if a person is working for so many hours, then only you can define it. So here, when we talk of frequency rate, what we are talking of, so in international standard, it says number of disabling injuries. How many disabling injuries have occurred? Multiply by 10 to the power 6. So that is per million man hours. Per million man hours. So 10 to the power 6 is the calculation. So number of disabling injuries multiplied by 10 to the power 6 divided by total number of men working hours. Like I gave an example, 10 into 1,000. So 10 into 1,000. So these are 10 people are working for 1,000 hours. So multiply by, so that is the total period. So total men hours worked in that period. So that gives you frequency. Now severity. So severity is also the same. Men days lost due to disabling injuries. So total number of man days that are lost multiply by 10 to the power 6, that is per million man hours divided by total man hours worked in that period. So that gives you severity rate. Now agency, what is an agency? We always say that this agency didn't do it. This is basically, as per definition, agency, the object, substance, or exposure which is most closely associated with the injury and which could have been made safer. That comes as an agency. So this is machine, pump, hosting apparatus, vehicles, hand tools. These are examples. Chemicals, so what we call agencies. This comes under agency. Now accident type, the manner of the conduct of the period of an injured person and the object substance of exposure or the movement of the injured person that results in the injury. So accident type is the manner of contact of the injured person and the with the object, substance or exposure or the movement of the injured person that results in the injury. So fall of a person, caught between machine, stumbling and striking against object, electric shock, poisoning, these are examples of accident type. Unsafe act. The violation of commonly what is unsafe act? The violation of commonly accepted safe procedure or practice which results in an accident. So operating without authority, working at unsafe speed, making safety devices inoperative, unsafe position or postures, failure to use personal protective equipment. These all come under unsafe act. Now unsafe condition, the condition of the selected agencies which could and should have been guarded or corrected. So improper guarding, defective agencies, hazardous associated to process, improper ventilation. So these are all part of unsafe conditions. Now let us come to biggest and the best discussion points, and that are accident sequence. So the basic theory of accident occurrence may briefly be stated as an injury occurrence only as a result of accident. An accident occurs only due to unsafe act and unsafe condition or both. Unsafe act and unsafe condition exist because of human faults. Faults of person occurs because of no management control. So this is the accident sequence. So now several studies have been taken to establish relationship between serious minor injuries, major injuries and other dangerous events. So the result of these studies are although they define the finding of the studies, the difference between the definitions of the accident data used, such study demonstrate consistent relationship between the different kinds of parameters that we have studied so far. So one of the most famous and people discuss this about Heinrich theory, that is in 1950 Heinrich established a theory. So let's see what it is. Heinrich theory, how it was derived? From the data available to him, the frequency of potential injury accident, Heinrich estimated that in a unit group of 330 accidents of same kind, there would be, so what he said was that if we take accident of 330 accidents of same kind, so what is going to be? So people always, mostly misunderstand this concept. So how it is defined? You should have data of similar accidents. So out of 330 accidents of same kind, he made a triangle that people will pass on. Suppose he took an example. So suppose in a corridor, big wire rope is lying. Correct? A wire rope is lying. Let us consider a very generalized concept. So if a wire rope is lying, so people are passing on the wire rope. So 300 person will stumble on it but escape no injury. Correct? 300 people, similar accident. 300 people will stumble over it but no injury at all. Now out of 330 people, 29 people will stumble on it and will have a minor scratch here and there. But definitely, what he said is, but definitely one person will stumble into a fall down and break his head, and he may die also. So this is what the theory was. So what is required to be done? What is required to be done is to remove the rope lying in the corridor. Nobody will do that in split, in spite the fact is that they uh, got hit by 329 times, and the effect is fatal accident. So what Henry said was, if you take incidents of similar kind, say around 330 incidents of similar kind he took, and he said out of them 300 will have no injuries, 29 will have minor injuries, but there is a surety that one will have a fatal. So Henry studied things that were very much related, the same one type of incident. Then came Bird's theory in 1969. So what Bird has to say in it, let us understand that now. So Bird in 1969 said that from the analysis of 1753 analysis of 175 19 1753, 498 accidents reported. So what he did, he reported 498 accidents by 297 cooperating organizations in US. So there was an analysis of 1753, out of which 498 accidents were reported by 297 cooperating organizations in USA. Now representing 21 different types of occupational estimate establishments and 21 different type of occupational establishment. So employing 17 lakh 50,000 people who worked more than 3 billion man hours during the exposure period were analyzed by F.E. Bird, and he drew the following ratio. What he said? He said 600 incidents which have no visible injury or damage happened, 30 property damage accidents were happened, 10 minor injuries happened, and 1 serious disabling injuries happened. So again, you have to understand that every individual who did research on certain parameters only. So that is why it was derived. So what was the parameter? There were 498 accidents reported. So you have to understand that what he did, he analyzed 1753 total number of accidents. So he analyzed 1753 accidents, out of which 498 accidents were reported by 297 cooperating organizations in US, representing 21 different types of industrial or occupational establishments. Now when he studied it, he said there were 17 lakh 50,000 people who worked for 3 billion man hours during the exposure period, where analysis by F.E. Bird derived that 600 incidents which were no possible injuries or damages, 30 property damages, 10 minor injuries, and 1 was serious injury. So this was a simple pyramid he derived. Then came Ty and Pearson in 1974. So Ty and Pearson also derived some theory. So what did they derive? The study was almost 1 lakh accidents they studied by the British industry. Now Ty and Pearson drew the following ratio. So what they did? They studied 1 lakh accidents. So when they studied 1 lakh accidents, what they derived? They said that there were 400 non-injury or damage incident or near misses, 80 property damage incidences, 50 injuries required first aid treatments, 3 minor injuries when the victim would be absent for up to 3 days, and 1 fatal and serious injuries can happen. So out of 1 lakh accidents, this was derived. So ultimately, every analysis was more or less focusing on one thing, and that is that similar incidents happen and the data is derived and analyzed in a single form of incident. So whenever we are deriving any type of conclusion that what can happen in your place, so you have to also analyze things based on single data collections, that is single type of injuries. So similar type of injuries, so then you will understand the potential of that particular hazard, that yes, in this particular case, if so many incidents are happening, then one fatal can also happen. So the cost of injury and ill health are only one, when we talk of then now further, when we talk of total cost of total loss control, so that is to be also analyzed along with it. So the cost of injury and ill health are only one component of unwanted happenings which results in unnecessary financial losses. Now, accidental damages or property, plant and product also imposes cost on the company. Under the total loss control approach, accidents are taken to include not only those circumstances which are actually cause of ill health and injury, but also every event involving damage to property and plant, product, environment, production loss, and increase in liabilities. So the total loss control approach is based on the research into accident cautiousness. So this indicates that there are many more incidents or near misses events than those those which are caused by than those that causes injury or property damage. So the examination of cause of all such loss events can provide valuable insights into inadequacies in risk control and actions which could prevent future injury or losses. Now, when it comes to safety and quality, so we usually look back and we take a very simple graph or a diagram, and that is like this. So safety and quality, it is a simple loss control block diagram. So what does this loss control block diagram say? It says we need to first identify and appraisal of the accident problem. So we need to identify how the accident what problem can occur. Then we need to develop the accident prevention and loss control program procedure. Then we need to communication is required of accident prevention and information. Then measurement of effectiveness of control should be there, and then we have to simply keep on repeating this cycle. So this is how we can prevent, we can form a loss control block diagram. Correct. Now coming to theory of accident occurrence. So theory of accident occurrence is very simple. So it is completely based on two aspects. That is, one is the industrial aspect and one is the personal aspect. So more or less, it is personal aspect. How unstable anatomically, physically, psychological characteristics. You have seen people coming to your organization who are unfit. So if they are physically not fit, they are mentally not fit, then they are not good to work. So these comes under personal reason. Then lack of knowledge or skill is also part of personal reason. Then improper mechanical and physical condition or unsafe system of work or social environment, this also forms one part. So this is the sub cause. Now personal and sub cause, they lead to what? They lead to failure, faults and failure of a person. If the equipment is not proper, then also person's fault will be there, because ultimately machine cannot maintain itself, right? So it is the person who has to maintain it. So there, this is where we help it. Then comes now when a person is at fault, so he'll lead this will lead to two things. That is, one is unsafe action and one is unsafe mechanical condition. So unsafe condition and act, which will lead to an accident or an injury. So this is the basic theory of accident occurrence. So you have to make sure that these things are always avoided. Now coming to safety in duties are different levels. So safety and duties are different levels. What is it that it defines? It defines very simple aspects. That is, first, starting from supervisor. Whenever any work start, a supervisor comes to start the work. So what are the instruction, training and leadership qualities that the supervisor should have, that at least people should listen to him. If nobody is listening to him, then he'll not be able to take out the work properly. So, and what is the management role then? Management role is to form the policy, that this is our policy, you need to follow stringently this. What is the role of safety directors? So safety director, the role is program direction and planning. So ultimately, whatever policy is made, based on which program and direction planning is done. Then comes the union. In union, all employee interact and cooperate. So this forms the union. So all working class comes under this. Then comes the employee. So what does the employee does? It learns in the use of safe work method and observe the rules. This is what the employee has to do. So this is what the worker has to do. So this forms the simple cycle of safety duties at different levels. So if these duties are maintained, or rather if people accept and adapt to these rules, they will be able to work safely. So I hope you have liked the video by now. If you have liked it, keep on liking it, keep on sharing it, and do not forget to subscribe us. Thank you very much, friends. We'll keep on posting such more videos, and be connected.